This is Mitchelle Blair. A woman who gained notoriety due to a tragic and terrifying case involving the deaths of two of her children.
I intentionally killed her.
The case came to light in 2015 and garnered significant media attention due to the shocking nature of the crimes. In March 2015, Blair's horrific actions were exposed when authorities discovered the bodies of her two children, Stoney Ann Blair and Stephen Berry, hidden in a deep freezer in their home. She claimed that her youngest son, Matthew, had told her that Stoney and Stephen had sexually assaulted him multiple times. Although Mitchelle wasn't even sure that the information was true, she decided to act upon it. And let me remind you, Stoney and Stephen were her own children. However, that didn't really matter to the psycho mother. Stephen was the first one to experience the wrath of Mitchelle Blair. After coming home from work one day, she saw Stephen playing with dolls in a very sinister way.
Home one day, my daughter, my oldest, met me at the door and she's like, "Mom, come see what he's doing with his dolls." And I'm like, "What is he doing?" He was making one doll, his little wrestle man, up on top of the other. No, I'm like, "Why was you doing that?" I said, "Anybody ever do this to you?" He said, "No." I said, "Then why are you doing that?" And he said, "Yes, Stephen did." And I was like...
And right then and there, Mitchelle lost it completely.
That's when I got a garbage bag and started putting it over Stephen's head. And I started asking him, "Bitch, you know what I'm saying? You see what this feel like? You can't breathe? You stopping my... That's my son. You could not breathe on top of getting raped. You was 6 years old at the time. You get what I'm saying?" So I put the bags over his head. He lost consciousness. I did that a couple times. He told me that would be face down. He had stuff around his neck. So I grabbed Stephen, I grabbed a belt and I put a belt around his neck and I lifted him up like, "Do you like how this feels, being choked with a belt?" So I dropped him. I held him up until he lost consciousness as well.
You were intending to...
No, I did not intend to kill Stephen.
No, I'm not... Listen to my question. You were intending to inflict serious physical harm, but not kill him?
Definitely.
Okay. Did you also punch him?
Yes, I did. Multiple
also
times.
kick him?
Yes, I did.
You talked about choking him. Did you also burn him?
Yes, I did.
Okay, how did you do that?
Hot water. Scalding hot water.
She killed him by accident after torturing him for hours. After she had killed Stephen, she then decided to chop him up in pieces and hide him in a freezer in the house. 9 months later, she discovered that Stoney had done the same to Matthew. This prompted Blair to give her the same treatment that Stephen had received months prior.
I repeatedly punched her. On many occasions, my son, I told him to tell me every single thing she did to him. So as she was telling me, he was telling me more and more things that she did. I assaulted her every time he told me what she did to him.
Mitchelle Blair practically tortured her own daughter to the point of death.
I punched her. I have put a bag over her head till she lost consciousness. I threw hot water on her, scalding hot water from the faucet.
Did you hit her in the head with a wooden
Yes,
stick?
I hit her on her head multiple times, over and over.
Was that shortly before she died?
That was actually days before she died and the day she died.
Okay.
I hit her on her back. It's like with her tailbone. I kicked her.
She chopped her body up and put it in the same freezer that she had used to hide Stephen's remains. Blair also coldly admitted that she would have killed her again if it was necessary.
You meant to kill her?
I definitely meant to kill her.
Okay. It wasn't an accident?
No, not at all. If I had a chance to do it again, I would. And I do not feel any remorse for what I did to Stoney.
The children's bodies would manage to stay hidden for approximately 2 years before being found. And it was only a coincidence that they were even found. A crew from the 36th District Court went into Blair's home to take some furniture out of the house. It was here that they discovered the infamous freezer of death. Blair was subsequently arrested and taken into custody. She was accused of physically abusing her children for years. While talking openly in the courtroom, Blair stated that she didn't call Stephen and Stoney her own children. To her, they were demons.
I don't claim him as my son now, and I do not claim Stoney as my daughter. I have 2 children, that's it. Steven and Stoney are demons, period.
After a long and hard-fought trial, Mitchelle Blair was found guilty of the murders of Stoney Ann Blair and Stephen Berry. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mitchelle Blair targeted the people closest to her. However, that was not the case of Jason Brian Dalton, who killed 6 people while being influenced by the devil himself. Jason Brian Dalton is an individual whose name is associated with a series of tragic events that transpired in Kalamazoo, Michigan on February 20th, 2016. On that fateful day, Dalton engaged in a shooting spree that claimed the lives of 6 innocent people and left 2 others critically wounded. Dalton's actions were both shocking and baffling to the community. Prior to the rampage, he had no known history of criminal behavior or violent tendencies. He had worked as an Uber driver and had maintained a relatively unremarkable existence. This abrupt transition from a seemingly ordinary life to a heinous act of violence left many searching for answers about the motive behind his actions. As investigations unfolded, it became apparent that Dalton's motives were rather sinister. According to him, his rampage was triggered by the Uber mobile app's logo that resembled the Order of the Eastern Star. This symbol is a Masonic symbol and is often associated with the devil. Dalton claimed that, when he opened the app, demons took over his body and commanded him to kill people. The victims of the shooting spree were selected at random. His senseless act of violence sent shockwaves throughout the community and even garnered national attention. Dalton was subsequently apprehended by law enforcement and faced charges related to the shootings. In court, he continued to show signs of being mentally ill. He would constantly interrupt the victims on the stand, even to the point that some of them started to cry.
Theater cars. No, they gave bags. These old people, they have these old black bags. They're called they're black. They're black bags, and people drive around and look at them. It gets real, like, hey, it's time people look, and then that's when they tell people it's time to get to Temple.
Cheryl, you need to listen to your attorney, right?
Yeah, you need to get to Temple because you need to get going because it's called intimidator bags.
You need to be quiet in today's proceedings, okay?
Yeah.
Don't you have anything to say, you whisper to your attorney. That's today's rules, okay?
What made it even more disturbing was that he didn't even know what he was saying. He almost seemed possessed. Although he was told to stop numerous times, he didn't. This finally caused the judge to order him to leave the courtroom.
We're here, honey. You're okay. You're okay.
Psychological evaluations and legal proceedings aimed to shed light on his mental state and the factors that might have contributed to his actions. However mentally troubled Jason Brian Dalton was, he was nothing compared to the infamous Alan McCarty.
What a bunch of guys, you stupid piece of You threatened my life, you
Alan McCarty, a disturbed individual, was apprehended on October 6, 2018 for making threats against a judge subsequent to his loss in a custody dispute over his children. It's perplexing why someone with a history of criminal activity would jeopardize their situation by targeting a judge, a self-defeating move to say the least. Yet, that's precisely what transpired. Following his arrest and appearance before a judge, he stated that he was being treated unfairly and in violation of his constitutional rights.
This is being done unconstitutionally. Y'all took my kids unrightfully. You won't allow my witnesses here. You won't allow my paperwork. Y'all took all my court paperwork. And when they all come in here, I'm going to say the same thing. So let's bring them in. Quit wasting my time and bring them in so I can tell them the same thing.
His behavior took a further downturn as he resorted to berating the judge, even insinuating the judge's privileged background.
My daddy owns the building and I look like a fucking idiot, huh? Brought your dress today, you little fucking prick.
This swiftly led to McCarty's removal from the courtroom. However, that didn't stop outburst. His voice could be heard echoing from a distant chamber. At another court session, this time for his sentencing, McCarty's lack of interest in the judge's words was evident. His focus was instead fixated on the pages of a book. Nevertheless, a moment arrived where he could no longer contain himself.
What a bunch of lies, you stupid piece of You threatened my life, you
The judge decided to kick him out of the courtroom again, as his bad behavior got worse.
You
Back room.
Suck my
However, when the guards went to grab him out of the chair, the psychopathic killer refused. McCarty's refusal to cooperate with officers led them to physically escort him out of the courtroom.
No, I'm not standing.
Stop resisting.
I'm not resisting. I'm just not
Stand
standing.
up.
I'm not standing. I don't have to stand. I hope you fall on that baby's head, you stupid never threaten that bitch. Freak, play back the shit, you stupid mother.
The culmination of his psychopathic actions and utter lack of decorum resulted in a harsh prison sentence of 20 years. His ill-considered actions ensured that he would remain estranged from his children for an extended period. Maybe he should have cooled down for a second and not have threatened a government official. However sinister you might think Alan McCarty was, he was nothing compared to Brandon Spencer, who would become the primary suspect in a brutal Halloween party shooting.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I think you life in prison.
In 2012, an unsettling incident unfolded at the University of Southern California during a Halloween party. It was here that Brandon Spencer found himself at the center of a shooting that left 4 individuals wounded. The context of the incident was rooted in a complex web of gang affiliations. Spencer held the belief that a Crips gang member by the name of Gino Hall had targeted him in a previous shooting, which resulted in him being wounded in the stomach. His animosity towards Hall was further fueled after an altercation on Twitter between the two. The tweets culminated in Hall challenging Spencer to confront him face-to-face, a challenge that eventually played out amidst the chaos of the Halloween party. The shooting took place within a crowded gathering of partygoers waiting to enter the USC Student Center's ballroom. Spencer's encounter with Hall escalated into a physical altercation, leaving Hall with multiple gunshot wounds and 3 other individuals also injured. Unfortunately for Spencer, a police officer had followed him to the party and arrested him immediately after. At trial, it seemed like Spencer started to realize what he had gotten himself into. Maybe the gangbanging wasn't really worth the temporary respect. Spencer could be heard crying repeatedly throughout the trial.
Today, in LA Superior Court, Spencer begged for mercy from Judge Edmund Clark Jr. before sentencing.
And when it got time to face the consequences of his actions like a man, Spencer begged for mercy. Once a notorious gang leader, now just a weak little coward.
Before sentencing.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I think you life in prison. And I'm not a bad person, but I made mistakes. But I'm not just some gangbanger that she tried to portray me as.
At last, we got to the main course, the sentencing. And it was here that Spencer totally lost it.
During sentencing, Spencer completely broke down.
The minimum period of parole eligibility is 15 years plus 25 years to life in accordance with Penal Code Section 12022, 3D. This is to be concurrent with
He could be seen continuously banging his head against the desk. In total, Spencer was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Although Spencer showed total regret for his actions in the end, that couldn't be said about the Waukesha Christmas Parade killer. This is Darrell Brooks. He is currently facing 6 counts of first-degree murder in connection with his participation in the tragic Waukesha Christmas Parade attack. On November 21, 2021, Brooks deliberately drove his SUV into the annual Christmas parade in Waukesha, resulting in the heartbreaking deaths of 6 innocent individuals. The motivation behind his heinous actions might leave you questioning his rationality. According to prosecutors, Brooks's disturbing motive stemmed from a dispute with his ex-girlfriend, a conflict that left him very angry. This anger, combined with his psychopathic tendencies, led him to commit an unthinkable act, exploiting the Christmas parade as a platform to unleash his violent rage upon the world. Brooks apparently drove in a zigzag pattern down the parade in order to hit as many people as possible. Initially, Brooks drove away after the incident. However, later that day, law enforcement caught up with him and took him into custody. Throughout the trial, Brooks exhibited behavior that demonstrated his disregard for the gravity of his actions. Opting to represent himself in court, Darrell Brooks employed questionable legal tactics that illustrated his lack of respect for the judicial process. His interactions with the judge were marked by frequent interruptions and a blatant disregard for her authority, showcasing his extreme disrespect.
Mr. Brooks, I'm ordering you to sit down and to let the state finish.
No, I'm not going to sit here and let somebody be inaccurate on the record and lie on the record.
At one instance, he repeatedly demanded that the judge cease speaking, a move that did not sit well with the court.
Mr. Brooks.
Come on, man, stop.
When you
Stop
aren't
Stop
even
it.
letting
You're a
me
public
ask the
servant, Your Honor.
Brooks was also seen laughing at witnesses while they were testifying against him.
He told Erica that he was gonna find her and he was gonna kill her.
Can we pull up Exhibit 5 for the witness, please?
As the trial progressed, Brooks continued to defy courtroom decorum, further revealing his troubled state of mind. During his sentencing, his rambling only served to worsen his unfavorable impression.
I did what you asked me to do. You told the bailiff to tell me.
Mr. Brooks, this is not a debate.
You told the bailiff to tell me that I had to write.
It's not a debate. You asked to come over here, and I honored that,
Well,
and
I
I brought you
exercised
back.
my right 3 times.
It became evident to the world that Brooks lacked remorse or empathy when he openly stated this during his sentencing.
Mr. Brooks, you are just simply trying to delay the inevitable. Please sit
I
down.
don't care about the inevitable. It was
I need
already
to
written
get
from day
through
one
this
what was going to
hearing.
happen. It doesn't make me lose any sleep about that. I know I'm okay. I'm okay with everything.
Despite Brooks's best efforts, the legal proceedings eventually concluded on October 26, 2022. The verdict handed down was an unequivocal reflection of his actions: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.